In the Northern Hemisphere, Advent coincides with the end of the growing year, a time of emptiness and waiting. Advent is also the beginning of the Church's year. The end is where we start from. How might our own endings become the turning points for new beginnings? What part does letting go and waiting play in our active cooperation with the life-giving Spirit? These are some of the themes we will explore through this season of Advent. Advent is a season of the Church's year, and it's a recurring movement within the growth of our life in God, one that takes us into renewed awareness of our dependence on God. Looking back, this dark time of the year has also coincided with some of the lowest moments in my own mood. I'm sure that's a physiological thing, my body's response to lack of light. I'm one of those sad people. For that reason, in the past, I had real difficulty with that clock change at the end of October, when the shortening day seems to be shortened yet further. One year, being on my own, I defied the instruction to put back the clocks by an hour. My rebellion only lasted a day, but for that Sunday, whilst for everyone else in Britain it began to get dark at 5 p.m, in the Chapman household the light lingered to 6. But by now, of course, it's begun to be dark at 4, and on some drear days it's almost as if the sun has forgot to rise. Creation too is shutting down. Fog lingers. The last leaves fall. Growth stops. It might be that there is something in your own mood that corresponds with this. You're more aware of your tiredness. You are faced with your inability to manage your life. There is something raw and vulnerable in the air. And it is here, in the dark time, when creation seems to be falling apart, that the Christian year begins with the season of Advent. I find it surprising, yet comforting, that the Christian year begins here, not with Easter or Pentecost or Christmas, but with a season where around us all seems to be falling apart, returning to the earth and losing its form. It makes me question my assumptions. Is what is taking place distressing disintegration? Or is this a season that carries the invitation to necessary rest? Creation needs its fallow time. It can't go on pushing forward, pushing upward, endlessly expending energy. Breaking down, letting go, returning to the earth, where all sorts of interesting things are happening, where underground roots go down, hidden from view, fallen seeds break open through frost and rain. All this is how it has to be. Returning to earth is the necessary grounding of the growth we will witness in time to come. Beginning to understand this has helped me feel differently about this time of dark dormancy. All that energy we expend in attempting to be someone, meet our own or other people's expectations, achieve the goals laid out for us, be good enough, improve our performance or productivity. It's exhausting. Now and then, we need to let go of it all and rest. That's what every night invites us to do. to let go our efforts and find release in sleep. The invitation of Advent is not just to let go and rest, as welcome as that is, but to seek our continuing resting place in relationship with God. Advent is a time to be in touch with, rather than run from, our inner emptiness and need. It's a season of longing and expectation directed towards the one who will come, the Christ, God with us, Emmanuel. It reminds us that the beginning is the meeting place of our longing and God's generous giving. For we do not make ourselves. We create the space, we allow the space for our own making. Advent reminds us that everything is gift and that God goes on creating if only we allow the room. Tiredness, restlessness, the inability to bring about meaningful change can become the open door to God if we turn that way. This is the witness of John the Baptist, the one who comes out of the wilderness and addresses our own wilderness, the one to whom the gospel assigns the words of the prophet Isaiah. A voice cries out, "In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." Our own creation begins and continues not with an act, but with a space, with the formless void that the Spirit hovers over, with the dust of the earth from which humankind is formed, and with that sometimes painful recognition of our incompleteness. We begin Advent in the wilderness. The wilderness is where we start from. One of the things that I have come to love about Advent is that see-through quality of the winter landscape. Bare soil, new horizons now that the trees have shed their leaves. That landscape might speak to our soulscape. We can only come to God as we are, without the acceptable face we attempt to present to the world. You might have heard me talk before about that everyday question, "How are you?" We respond with an everyday phrase, "I'm fine, thank you," or "I'm doing okay." By social convention, we recognize "how are you" isn't really a question, it's a form of greeting. We don't expect anyone to tell us how they really are. That would take far too long. But what if someone asked you, "How are you?" and meant it, and wanted to know, and was prepared to listen, however long it might take, however raw the reality might be? Imagine God asking you that question, "How are you?" Wanting to know, gently yet firmly guiding you past that stock response, "I'm fine, I'm okay." How are you? How are you physically? What does your body tell you? How are you? What are you feeling? Where are you struggling? Where is your joy? What do you need right now? Where is God for you right now? How are you? The surprise of Advent is that God continues to come alongside, to be with us and for us, into the muddle of however things are, however we are, into that vulnerable space of that raw reality. It's the mystery of incarnation again and again for each one and for each moment. What we can bring to God as our Advent offering is our humility, our earthiness, for that's the root of the word. Like the trees with their open, leafless hands stretched out to the sky, or the lowly earth ploughed and broken. We rest all pretense. We let go our exhausting efforts to be good enough through our own efforts. We let go into relationship, into love, choosing to come into where and how we are. God's Advent gift to us is hope. If we seem to fall apart, it is so that we can be gathered together, formed by loving hands, breathed upon like that Genesis clay from which humankind is created. As these weeks progress, we will explore how our seeming endings are in God's reality our beginnings. The end is where we start from.